we're talking about a goal of 4%, 100,000, and it'll be very difficult for us to measure by tradition. Again, we've talked about win number as the sun in which all campaign plans orbit around, but polls are the stars that help campaigns navigate how well they're doing in getting to where they're going, right? And we just can't use polls, except for if we qualify for public financing. We probably can't afford internal polls, and external polls, if we organize and get ourselves included in them, or if they include us by default, that's great. But sometimes we'll be in the margin of error. Putting that aside, we just got our first poll, and that's kind of exciting. So let's talk about that poll a little bit. We had it in our newsletter, Theory of Change. You can subscribe to that as well on our website. But talk about this poll. What are the takeaways, Andy?
Yeah, so this poll was from the Anne Arundel County Community College, Political Science Department, I think. And what it did was it was a survey of Anne Arundel County voters. And Anne Arundel County, for those that don't know, is the place where Annapolis is. It's kind of a purple county, but maybe leans purple, but is blue. It's Maryland. So there's not a ton of blue counties, and there's not a ton of contested counties, but I think Anne Arundel County is one of those counties. So this poll had Larry Hogan, former Governor Larry Hogan, who wants to be president, current Governor Wes Moore, who went on The View to say he doesn't want to be president. So I guess, if you go on The View to say you don't want to be president, it's clear that you don't want to be president. Anyway, it had those two guys, and it offered a Green Party candidate. We got 2% in that poll, 2% of Democrats, 2% of lean Democrats, and 4% of independents. That's pretty good for us, I think. It's the first time we've been included in that poll at all. So people who take that poll and see that poll aren't used to seeing us. And I think it says a couple of things. One, I think our campaign is going to exceed the expectations that people have for a Green Party campaign typically. So I think that it is pretty likely that our generic Green polling in that campaign, we're going to do better than that, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing is the race where we are least or most likely to be ignored by frustrated Democrats and frustrated left or liberal-leaning or left-leaning independents is a race where Larry Hogan is squaring off against Wes Moore. Larry Hogan is the only Republican who has shown the ability to win in the state of Maryland in the last decade at a large level. And if he were to come back, he would create a close race that I think a lot of people would be talking about spoiler effects in. And so those two takeaways, I think, are a positive sign that the environment is good for a Green Party campaign to do well. And I think, as I said, we are going to outperform the traditional generic Green Party campaign. So when those voters in Anne Arundel County who hear our plans for expanding housing, for capping the rent, for stopping the destruction of the Bay, for making sure that they have access to the goods and services that they need, that we can control prices, that we can control electricity prices, when the other candidates are busy fighting each other about how they position themselves for their future plans, I think we're going to do really well beyond that 2%. And so I think that we will start to be included in more polls. I think that I hope that the next UMBC poll includes a green option. And then once we win the primary, we know that we'll be included in that poll. And I think we'll start to get included in other polls. I think the more money we get too, and the more press coverage we get, the more likely we are to be included in these polls, and more likely to do well in these polls. One last thing I want to say about this. Greens typically overperform their voter registration, but underperform the polls, because people in September or August or something like that are thinking about the green alternative. And as you get closer, they're not getting contacted by the campaign. So they're either likely to not vote, or they're likely to make a lesser evil vote at that point. And so I think if we are strategic and implement the things that we've talked about, the on-the-ground, grassroots, person-to-person, peer-to-peer organizing that comes through the process of winning our primary, the contact with people, the regular making a podcast, the regular newsletter, all that stuff, I think that we can overperform the polls and we can surprise people. Remember, I think we've said this a couple of times. Greens overperform the polls when they have a core group of people who have been organized and are willing to organize.
Yeah. Thanks so much for reading those tea leaves, Andy. Before we move to the last goal, which is a more overarching goal and a less specific one, I did just want to give the propers for that poll. So it's from the Center for the Study of Local Issues. And you're correct that the pollster, Professor Dan Nataf, is in the political science department at Anne Arundel Community College. So you can check out his work. He's been doing this for a long time, and he has a really innovative method and asks really important questions that get at the root of, the issues facing folks in Anne Arundel County related to the high price of housing, the lack of public transportation, and so on.